sat on their park bench like bookends. A newspaper blown through the grass falls on the round toes of the high shoe.
Simon and Garfunkel. Very nice. Bookends. Actually, I've got two copies in this plastic sleeve here. We got first, this is a 70s American pressing, and then we have an 80s Dutch pressing here. So we got the Simon and Garfunkel quartet. Right. I have all of Paul Simon's albums. Not all of them on vinyl, alas, but I've got all of his albums. And I used to have all of Art Garfunkel's albums, but now I have only one of them. That gives you an idea about who I prefer in the duo Simon and Garfunkel. And Paul Simon will return on this list later as a solo artist, you can be sure of that. First time I heard Simon and Garfunkel was the Central Park reunion concert in New York that my mother had on a cassette tape that she played frequently in the early 1980s. So I heard it early, but I think I started to listen when she purchased a box set with all the 5 original Simon and Garfunkel albums. I think I listened through all the albums, well, in the same night, and from then on I was a great fan of them. This was in the mid-1980s, 84, 85 sometime. I was 9-10 years old. One of the earliest books in English that I read was a biography about Simon and Garfunkel, and that must have been in 1985, 1986 too. And when I read it, I was amazed to find out the fact that from time to time they didn't really get along that well, even if they had the power and talent to create such great music together. Of course, I was then in my early teenage years, and I didn't know much about human relationships at that time. Now I understand it a bit more. The book I read was written shortly after the relative commercial failure Heart and Bones was released, and I found out that it was supposed to be a comeback album for Simon and Garfunkel, but they got annoyed at each other during the tours, and their cooperation ended again. Since then they have reunited several times. They made concerts and tours together, but I feel it only happens when Paul Simon don't really have any music project of his own going on. And to be quite honest, as a team, they were at their best in the 1960s, even if Paul Simon has made amazing albums on his own and Art Garfunkel has made at least one truly great album, Breakaways, and some decent albums during the years. It was the 60s that was their decade. My favorite album with Simon and Garfunkel, it's this one, Bookends, which is both traditional and daring at the same time, and really the last real Simon and Garfunkel album since the last original album, Bridge Over Troubled Waters, which is also a very good album. Sometimes feels like an early Paul Simon solo album with some guest vocals by Art Garfunkel. Probably due to the fact that Art Garfunkel by this time was more interested in his career as a movie actor. Anyway, even though they had many disagreements during the years, it's still quite good to know that they are still, after all, old friends.